look for remediation during it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Sheasley?
Thank you, Mayor. I am not the expert on this by any means. I understand the council's concern. Absolutely. I don't know. I do believe that the anticipated source from the study that we looked at, or there was a South Adams County study several years ago that looked at a site south of 270 outside of the city, potentially creating a plume in this direction, that was presented back in February. But I don't know if the investigation here has shown that there was any other source identified. But just to point back to that presentation, if it helps in any way.
Thanks, sir. Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, just so you're aware, Mr. Craig Fitchett does have his hand raised. If you'd like me to recognize him.
Go ahead.
Mr. Fitchett, you are unmuted and you should be allowed to speak now.
Thank you. Craig Fitchett with Del West Development Corp. Regarding this plume and the 1,4-dioxane, it has been identified, as Robert Sheasley mentioned. The source was the chemical sales company south of 270, near I-70 actually. And it was a Superfund site that was identified 30 years ago. They just didn't know the plume had moved this far. So at this point, our additional testing is just confirming a 30-year-old problem. Most of the city has this plume underneath it already.
Councilwoman Allen Thomas?
Yes, thank you. So is Del West doing anything or with the project development to stop the plume from spreading?
We're unable to stop groundwater, but we will monitor and make sure that we build in an appropriate fashion to mitigate any kind of vapor release that has not, by the way, as Rick Wells had alluded to earlier, been discovered. So at this point, this is a groundwater problem that was initially found in Commerce City's own drinking wells. So this is a problem that we're dealing with, and it is not an urgent issue, and we feel like there's no health issues concerned. It's just something that as you identify these pollutants, you need to just make sure that you build in the appropriate fashion.
So to clarify, then, do you already have means of testing? And that's my concern. It is a concern if residents are going to be drinking that. I know you're saying some already are drinking the water, but I mean, do you already have means to monitor this in place?
What's happened is we monitored it, and we've I forgot how many wells we've drilled, but we've tested the site in many areas, and the levels aren't going up, and the levels will not affect any drinking water on our property at all, and no potable water will be used either from those wells. So we are aware of the problem and building around it.
But so what if they do go up? That's what I'm saying. Is there something in place if it does go up then, or what's the plan if it does?
These are historical releases that we have no idea what the outcome will be, but we've not seen any reason to have any concern. We've had not one, but 4 different environmental consultants involved on this. And the overwhelming recommendation is to move forward with vapor barriers, and the Colorado Department of Health and Environmental has also agreed that there's no imminent concern, and if you build properly and do the right things and do not allow wells to be dug on the site for potable water, you have no concern. This will come out in the VCUP, as well as we are expecting to have a no action determination letter in the next 45 days, which means that the state has determined that there's no reason to continue to further test this site as long as we can stay within our groundwater management plan. And so there will be a groundwater management plan that's part of the VCUP that will illustrate and tell us how we move forward if we do encounter water during construction and beyond.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tinklenberg.
Just wanted to add on to that South Adams County Water and Sanitation District is aware of the situation and monitoring the level of the plume and what's happening with it. So they work with CDPHE, and also the federal EPA has been made aware of the situation. On a further note, I was a little slow on raising my hand in the Urban Renewal Authority meeting, but I wanted to point out one of the items that's in the packet. This is unrelated to the VCUP, but one of the items in the packet, it lists all of the organizations that are involved in the project. And there are 12 different companies on behalf of Del West. And the reason I raise that is I just want to point out the complexity of this whole transaction. Del West initially approached us about building residential property, and they proposed residential and both single family and multifamily. And then we discussed with them of taking on the project and becoming the master developer. And so the project became more and more complex. And so what I wanted to do is just take a moment to thank Robert Sheasley, Caitlin Quander, Jenna Lowry, Jason Rogers on our team. They have spent a tremendous amount of time going back and forth with the attorneys and Craig himself, and just working out all of those different details, because every time there was an additional organization involved, it affected all of the different agreements that were in place. So I just wanted to give kudos to those individuals for the tremendous amount of effort that they've invested in this project. So thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that information. Councilwoman Noble.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on Mr. Fitchett's comments. He mentioned that there would be a report in 45 days, and that would seem logical that we should know what that report says. Affordable housing or affordable properties tend to wind up on properties with environmental issues. And even though the dioxane is known by the water department, and we do know this, the water district, and we talked about it at the water commission meeting. And in fact, they said that they actually have concerns about it. I'd like to know from Mr. Sheasley, do we have any liabilities in this area as a city on this property?
That's a very broad question. Currently, the city or the URA, I believe, and I think that's important to distinguish between the Urban Renewal Authority and the city. The city is not an owner of the property. The Urban Renewal Authority is the owner of the property. And an analysis into that level of detail has not been done to run down what potentially could come out of this. However, the overwhelming guidance has been the acceptance of the issues from the Department of Public Health and Environment and the coordination of the parties and the level of testing that has been done over the last 6 or 8 months has shown that this is the level of response that the regulatory bodies responsible for this have recommended. Not even no prohibition on development or even the measures that Del West is voluntarily taking.
What is that 45-day report that they're coming back with?
I believe it was I don't recall the phrase he used, It was, I believe, no action was possibly the answer, saying that the CDPHE was not concerned with the issue sufficient to proceed with any further investigation.
And we'll know that in 45 days if that's their decision.
Based off what Mr. Fischette said, yes. There is currently the process that they're going through now. I think the timeline is driven by some regulatory notice requirements that will transition while the property is being conveyed to Del West various entities. That process has already begun in tandem with this. And I believe that that can't issue until after that notice process is completed.
Mr. Sheasley, just so you're aware, Caitlin Quander is currently raising her hand. Would you like me to move her over?
Yes, please. I did not know she was still listening or was still present. That would be very helpful.
Hi, sorry. Caitlin Quander, counsel for the Urban Renewal Authority, but thought I could share some information here for council as well. Just to add to what Mr. Shealy was just describing on the liability question, I would also add that the Urban Renewal Authority and the city actually took out an environmental insurance policy as well when it acquired the property. Now, 8 years ago, that's off the top of my head, but when it acquired the property, it actually took out that policy, and that policy remains, and we remain named parties in it, and will continue to be named parties, and that carries with it as part of the sale to Del West. So there is some additional protections there under that policy if there were to be an issue that arises. Second, to just clarify the point that Craig raised around the report question you had, Councilmember Noble. So the draft VCUP is complete. We know what it says. And so Robert's correct in describing that now we're in a notice process where the report is available for review. And at the end of the 45 days, they issue the letter that we all anticipate them to issue. So happy to share a copy of the draft VCUP if you'd like to take a look at it, but we do know what is in there. And the recommendation that Mr. Fischette described that's being implemented is what is recommended in that report.
Councilwoman Allen Thomas.
Yes, thank you. Robert, I just wanted to clarify, is the city the one who initiated the URA?
Correct. The city statutorily created the Urban Renewal Authority. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion and second to approve the Fifth Amendment of the purchase and sale agreement? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Madera,
Yes.
Councilmember Allen Thomas,
No.
Councilmember Noble,
No.
Councilmember Guardiola,
Yes.
Councilmember Hurst,
Yes.
Councilmember Grimes,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Frank,
Yes.
Mayor Huseman.
Yes.
Passes 7 aye, 2 nay.
Thank you. That is all the business that we have for this special meeting of the City Council, so we will adjourn. Next, we will go to the study session, which is using the same Zoom meeting. So we'll call the study session to order, and we have 4 presentations this evening. The first presentation is on the I-270 corridor improvement updates. Will the city clerk please move all the panelists over?
Yes, sir. Give me just one moment here.